days, they were able to wake up Papa Joe from his midday nap to sign this bill averting a government shutdown for at least 45 days. So we're not totally repossessed yet. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse podcast. Hey everybody, this is Mr. Fox of the I Refuse podcast, season 5. Here we are. Welcome back. This is another new episode for this week. A couple of things happened while you guys were asleep the past 6 or 7 days. First things first, while y'all were asleep, the government was able to avert a shutdown for 45 days. They were able to wake up Papa Joe from his midday nap to sign this bill averting a government shutdown for at least 45 days. So we're not totally repossessed yet. We have 45 days, or they have 45 days to get not only the new budget approved, but protect a lot of other programs. Something about a bear week was in there somewhere. So they have 45 days to get their stuff together. Another thing that happened from that House Speaker Mccarthy looks like he's on the chopping block to be ousted as Speaker of the House. The House will have a vote today, today's Tuesday, on an effort to oust him as Speaker of the House. Now, if you remember, he probably about a few weeks ago or a month ago, reports came out that he was leading an impeachment inquiry, trying to rally support within the House to get an impeachment inquiry filed, processed, get all this intel as much as possible against Papa Joe. Justifying it that financial or business dealings, money that was made overseas on these trips, his son Hunter possibly being involved, is causing a distrust by the American people. I'm American people. I couldn't care less. So now that we have 45 days, we've averted a government shutdown currently. This puts Speaker of the House McCarthy in an interesting position where you have Democrats that are looking at him kind of sideways, and they've been doing that for a while. So like back when they had like a debt relief conversation, some word came out that McCarthy was brokering a deal with Biden on the relief plan that he was able to get Papa Joe to sign a couple of things kind of ahead of the House voting on the stuff. So you have roughly 200 members voting on something that you've already satisfied. So you have people on the left that are looking at McCarthy, have been looking at McCarthy sideways since early this year. Apparently there's been a long-standing threat to file a motion to vacate by Representative Matt Gaetz, which precludes the first procedural step pushing a vote to remove McCarthy as the Speaker of the House, which leaves McCarthy not sure how much support he has against such a motion. The issue stands that McCarthy has refused to commit to promises he made earlier this year to House Republicans to win their support for his spot in the first place, and his reliance on Democratic votes to avoid the government shutdown this past weekend, right? McCarthy's counter-argument is Gaetz is harboring a grudge over McCarthy's refusal to squash a Congress ethics complaint filed against him for sexual misconduct allegations and illegal drug use in 2021. McCarthy's question is, will McCarthy himself be removed because 4 to 5 Republicans joined with all the Democrats? That's the question here. If 98% of the conference wants you to be speaker, but you create a Congress where 4 people can determine if they work with the other side, how strong is the continuity of the government itself? Where it currently stands right now is that Democrats fresh from their caucus meeting decided as a collective to not assist McCarthy in any way, given reason after reason that Republicans deal with their own problems and let them wallow in their incompetency and inability to govern. Whereas on the other side, McCarthy may have some support from the majority of House Republicans, with some attempting to convince Gaetz not to pursue the vote, even with their own frustrations with McCarthy. So outside of that, when you're looking at the House, right, Republicans hold a slim 4-seat majority in the House, with 212 Democrats holding the majority vote to either block or pass the vote. Some House Democrats are willing to help McCarthy, but not without a cost. Some are not aware of any concessions that McCarthy has made, and some suggesting that other Democrats need to think carefully about whether or not to strike a deal with McCarthy. The trail that McCarthy has left the past fiscal year hasn't been a favorable one of mistrust from his fellow constituents. Performance of someone who had a negotiation with Biden, I mentioned this a bit ago, signed a deal that 314 members voted on in a bipartisan way and walked away. The debt ceiling fight, for a prime example, earlier this year, which is what that was a result of. This, along with GOP infighting, impacts citizens who look to Social Security, public schools, and freedom of reproductive rights. So, looking at this, it's as an employee of the government, right? This could have possibly have been maybe my 3rd or 4th shutdown. And the reality is that a lot is on the chopping block, unfortunately, and word on the curb that I talked about on the podcast is that I may have or may have not, that a thorn in the side of some of the people that are Republicans came down to, I believe, trans rights and gender equality. And that's a hot button. Trans rights, trans equality, don't say gay, stuff like that. And when I heard that gave me pause. It's like, you have people that we voted for that are supposed to represent us, and to hold the rest of us up is because you have personal feelings about trans people. And it's like, why? Like, they're not bothering anybody. And then on top of that, it's probably not a good look as a Speaker of the House to try to drum up some support or rally for some support for an impractical cause. I mean, it's not uncommon. I mean, human beings all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, will try their best, probably out of sheer boredom, to go after somebody because they don't like them. Like I said, we were brought up as justification for this inquiry into Biden and this campaign to impeach him because it's perceived that he may be hiding some stuff that the deception in and of itself is causing distrust among the American people. Hadn't been aware of such a thing. So, it's interesting for me that we're currently in this era when you think of job security, respect for employees, people in retail and food service, rallying and advocating and marching and speaking for a higher wage. Recently, Waffle House employees have been campaigning and striking for higher pay. And they should get it. As much as they put into, like, Waffle House is definitely a real deal kitchen place. It's somewhere between like McDonald's and like a steakhouse. Like, they're really making the food from scratch, right? Then you put on top of that, most Waffle Houses are 24 hours. The brunt of their business is from drunk people. Maybe the later half of second shift, into definitely third shift. No security, a lot of fighting, and I've been going to Waffle Houses for about 15, almost 20 years. Went to my first Waffle House when I was stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi. Been a fan ever since. The staff, their average hourly rate amongst the entire staff behind the counter, no more than $10, I would say. And that's including the chefs. Waiters and waitressing, I don't know what can be done to raise the hourly rate for that, because they make most of their money from tips. I think at the most, waiters make probably $2 or $3 an hour, aside from tips. But there's a lot you had to factor into that, as opposed to like McDonald's, where it's like, I saw a breakdown, a presentation of some kind that was justifying the hourly wage for a McDonald's employee. And it ultimately came down to productivity, but it's like there's no way to really measure how much food is going out an hour to quantify such a justification. From the top down, businesses are not looking to pay a livable wage without an education level of some kind beyond high school. Used to be, you could probably like 15, 20 years ago when I was in school, that you get a part-time or a full-time job while in high school, you make roughly about $6 an hour. And, people will make a career out of that, fast food, retail. And the most you could possibly make as management is probably 50, 55,000. And that's salary. So it's like whether you work 8 hours or 12 hours or 20 hours, the pay is still the same. And being a manager, you have to be ready to work whenever. And people call out all the time. That's the downside of retail and food. So, as somebody that started out working for $5, $5.25 at the most an hour in high school, it is long overdue that a lot of the people in food service, especially down at the Waffle House, especially down at McDonald's, with everything going up in price, from gas to bus fare to insurance to groceries, day-to-day things you need to sustain your life. Yeah, they should have been making $15 an hour years ago. But of course, businesses are trying to work around that by driving down the numbers of actual manpower, putting in more technology, and in a way removing the middleman from in-store service. But give Waffle House employees more money. It's clear that for years now that we've been at this point where more and more people are starting to pay attention. And, the employees in fast food and retail are paying more attention and mobilizing for sustainable pay. And the strikes are working, getting more and more people on your side, persuading them is becoming a more powerful thing. And it doesn't take a college education or a high school diploma to tap into that. So I wouldn't be surprised maybe 5 or 10 years from now if the tide starts to turn and the power starts to shift, the power structure, so to speak. So we'll see where that goes. In the meantime, this whole thing going on down at the house, down in D.C., is very indicative of not thinking 100% or planning all the way out before executing such a plan that involves one of the most powerful positions in the world. Now, you may not have to like the person you're working with or working for. In this case, you're a member of the House, and your target is you want to oust president from the seat. Now, I said probably 2 episodes ago on the podcast that such suspicious timing about this inquiry that McCarthy had for a bit, where it was just like, now this is coming to like closer to the presidential election. Now, I'm not saying that to not like Biden or to have an issue with Biden means you want 45 back in the House, but I'm no fool. Like, there's mud on both sides. There really is no true winner. I don't think it's looking like this inquiry may fall and crumble into dust. And they'll just move on to other things. I mean, right now, the biggest thing in the room to accomplish is approving a 2024 budget. So parks can stay running, schools can stay running, nature can be preserved, the national parks and stuff like that. Like, this isn't just about making sure government workers get their pay. Although, part of the agreement that a lot of us have is that this is just par for the course. It may not happen all the time, like it may not happen every year, but it's gotten to the point maybe the last 8 or 9 years where it was just like they'll either get it in the 25th hour or some of us won't make it to Thanksgiving. Now, mind you, when a shutdown happens, we're working during it, or if you're essential, you're working. If you're not essential, you're not working. You get paid, just not on time when the budget is approved. So the turnaround's not that bad, but it's very, very stressful when you get to like August or September and the news starts coming out that this thing is possible, and it's like, well, damn. And nobody knows until the Monday or whatever day October the 1st falls on. But 8-9 months leading up to that, you're not thinking about that. So you are very well going into October like, damn, whatever I got in my pocket is what I got. There's just no way of telling. And for how long? But all that aside, still the most stable industry to be in, or faction to be in. And it possibly gets no better than that. So that's what we got going on. As of today, I'm looking at my arm like I got a watch on. But another thing that happened while y'all were asleep, another affirmative action related thing or adjacent thing has been overturned. So not necessarily a bill, but a program out of, I believe, Atlanta. So recently, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court in Atlanta ruled on this past Saturday to temporarily prevent the Fearless Fund to continue running its Strivers Grant Contest, which awards $20,000 grants to small businesses led by at least one woman of color. A panel of judges decided 2-1 that the venture capital fund is discriminatory. The counter argument from Fearless Fund is that the grants are awards, not contracts, and are thus protected by the First Amendment. Here's the thing. Two things. When I read the article at first, I was like, who filed a racial discrimination suit? I'm like confused. I'm like, who did it? And then I scrolled, right? The person that filed the racial discrimination suit against this program. Also a founder of the American Alliance for Equal Rights, is a white conservative man by the name of Edward Blum. Bitch, I did the Home Alone face. You got to be kidding me. Because here's the thing. How is it discriminatory against white people? Like you I laughed a little bit because I'm like, you are you serious? Like, because first of all, Atlanta, the city, predominantly black, right? Like, just think of the optics. Think of, I don't know, reading the fucking room. We are about, let's see, July, August, September, October, November. We're about almost 5 months removed from another overturn against affirmative action involving colleges and universities. Overturning affirmative action race-conscious admissions, right? Admissions into colleges and universities. So, understand that, like, you know, the Roe versus Wade being overturned, I believe last year, the affirmative action in colleges and universities being overturned in June. Now you have, on a slightly smaller scale, equal opportunity programs, solely, like, this is a targeted overturn kind of thing in my opinion, because this is specifically to help women of color, female entrepreneurs, make their way into entrepreneurship. It's like a step in, right? Like, it's not even a 6 or a 7-figure dollar amount. Like, they're not going to, like, New York, Wall Street, setting up in a high-rise in Manhattan, like, $20,000. Like, that's almost the size of a very, very small loan. There's probably not a whole lot you can do in Atlanta with $20,000 as a business owner. I mean, you could do something, right? But it's not disrupting. You're not disrupting the white people in the suburbs. You're not interrupting their meals. You're not diverting their attention away from wherever they're going. Yet and still, Edward Blum, middle-aged white man, felt some kind of way. And I honestly cannot tell you what inspired him to target this specific program, because quiet as it's kept, there aren't a lot of programs across the country aimed at helping black people or people of color a lot to gain entry into an industry or a faction of entrepreneurship or business or finance, you know, male-dominated spaces, just for a little slice. Just try it out. You apply for it. You satisfy the requirements. you probably had like X amount of months or X amount of hours you had to put into it. And everything checked out. Yet, this man, mean conservative, Republican, whatever your political standpoint is, had time and took time out of his day to file a motion or file, a block to prevent any possibility, temporarily, but knowing him, middle-aged white men can be petty, can be very, very petty. That there's nothing that says that he won't go back down to the court and file and keep it active, keep the block and the prevention active, so this program can continue to help a community, a panel of investors or stakeholders and entrepreneurs who may have 1 or 5 black women or women of color entrepreneurs to just do a little something and do for themselves. Like, I read the story and I said to myself, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Like, reading the article, it made me ask the question, when was the FICO score system established? When was the credit scoring system established? So the FICO scores system was started in the late 1980s, but the credit score system has been around since the 1950s. And the reason why those questions came to my mind while I was reading about this guy and his beaming with joy that affirmative action in colleges and university admissions was overturned in June, and now he was able to successfully block this program, I believe done in Atlanta, that would have helped entrepreneurs, black women, women of color, to be business owners, to have a little bit of something, a little bit of empowerment in the business world. Again, $20,000 is not that big of a disruption. It made me think of these little incidents. I wouldn't even say incidents. Well, yeah, little moments in history, right? That are created, invented, put in place to keep the divide that separates us from equality. Now, mind you, every person is starting at a different point in life. And on top of that, the opportunities for this group is more than the opportunities for this group. And with that, we're constantly reminded every year at this point to what that disparity looks like in different social, economic, cultural moments, right? Here you have this man could have been doing anything else in his life. Could have went parasailing with his feet out. Could have hopped on his boat, drank his his Coors or his Michelob or whatever, middle-aged white men be drinking, and went on about his life. Yet he has managed to set a precedence to where white people can file a motion, can file something of legal merit, and yes, they are well within their rights to do so, against something that they deem is a detriment, discriminatory. They can successfully justify that something is going against a constitutional right. But I cram to understand how a person with so much privilege, and I got a lot of flack one day back when I was on Clubhouse, about the discussion was about police brutality, right? And I believe the police officer was white, and the person that was killed was black. I'd said something to the effect of, well, the police officer most likely was a 45 supporter. All I heard was like a collective moan from other people in the Clubhouse channel. But I was right though. Like, news came out that this particular police officer was in fact a follower of 45. And the thing about it is that just because, he's not in office anymore, that doesn't mean that he can't try again, even with all this shit happening. But just because he's not up there doesn't mean that attitudes like his are not still alive. Now, somebody like myself who has been exposed to a more truthful retelling or telling of history, where I was educated that, white people were saviors and they discovered this country, and that's not how it went, that you were told. A more sanitized, PC, abridged version that was not 1,000% true to the real truth. That you look at this guy, this conservative Edward Blum, and you're like, we're at a point right now to where you can look at somebody, cross-reference that with what they do, the time they take out of each day to pursue a cause that is against affirmative action, any legal rightful step towards giving, minorities, people of color, opportunities to possibly have a life that's equitable to others. Like, they did the work. They went to college. They went through programs. They studied. They tested. All hard work. Like, hours, credible, meridious hours. And here comes this white man, just like, yeah, that's discriminatory, according to this act. that this particular grant system program over here that you got going on down here is illegal, and this is why. Now, like I said, it's temporary. I don't know how long the stay will remain in place. Didn't detail as much. But understand this, that like there's a lot of little civil wars happening. Like in-house, no pun intended, but also like in state, in democracy, in law, in just domestically, right? These little distractions, and you probably would have never heard about this had I not came up here on the Averts podcast and said anything. That this is definitely going to be a little snowball that's more than likely going to grow in size over time and unearth a new wave of people exercising their privilege, not for the betterment of others, but to protect and keep in place a system that works against us. It's not new. It's always been a thing. And I think as long as other privileged people tell themselves comforting lies, or, you know, they have this selective vision or selective amnesia, that it will continue to go on. But the great thing about having a podcast, especially the I Refuse podcast, available everywhere, is that we can talk about this stuff and really start to reevaluate society and feel empowered to inquire, rally, support, and do some digging. Like what are y'all doing down there in your job that we pay for? What are you doing down there from that seat that we voted you into? What's going on here? What's happening? Like these little thing, these little not publicly or nationally reported, unless you go digging. Like that's a wild flex for Edward Bloom to pull that in Atlanta, a predominantly African American city. And there's probably a lot of people in Atlanta that weren't even aware. So, Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast, the circus is definitely in town. You know, one thing about October is that you're either going to find out something that just happened, or a lot of stuff's going to be revealed about something that has been going on behind the scenes for a long time. And these are two instances that satisfies both of those things. And I'm so glad that I was able to come up on here and talk to y'all about it, because it's very troubling. Like, you have these two stories that impact a lot of people. And these are two stories that have two different outcomes. You have the one story where it's like the person that was leading the charge on our way to October, possible government shutdown, impeachment inquiry into Papa Joe, is now finding himself possibly on the oust. Then you have Blum. I've never heard of this guy before. And I try not to like think, oh, well, he's a conservative. That just explains a lot. But I literally opened up the article and was like, racial discrimination against a program that is a pro-affirmative action. And the guy's white. See, that's how it is when you've been in the house too long eating unseasoned food. But we're going to save that for another episode. Like, this is crazy. It's Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. Season 5 is available wherever you get your streaming and your music and your movies. Apple, Overcast, Spotify. We also have this YouTube channel, of course. I have a WordPress blog, a Twitter at I Refuse Podcast, all one word. Instagram at I Refuse Podcast, _ between the words. Link is in the bio, of course. And we will catch you guys later. Peace. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I